Welcome to the Thursday cross-reference episode of the Selah Time to Pause podcast from Plexus Salvation Army, an online church in the UK. I'm Ian, and today I'll be cross-referencing our thought from Monday, where we considered Andrew, full of joy, seeking out his brother to share the good news that they'd found the Messiah. And so we're turning to a story from the Old Testament, found in 2 Kings chapter 7 verses 3 to 11. This particular story might perhaps be unfamiliar to you. It's set during a time of war between Israel and the Syrian kingdom of Aram. Israel are besieged within the city walls and are being starved out. But as you listen to this story, see if you can hear the parallel with Andrew that I'll be exploring.
Now there were 4 men with leprosy at the entrance of the city gate. They said to each other, "Why stay here until we die? If we say, 'We'll go into the city,' the famine is there, and we will die. And if we stay here, we will die. So let's go over to the camp of the Arameans and surrender. If they spare us, we live. If they kill us, then we die." At dusk they got up and went to the camp of the Arameans. When they reached the edge of the camp, no one was there, for the Lord had caused the Arameans to hear the sounds of chariots and horses and a great army, so that they said to one another, "Look, the king of Israel has hired the Hittite and Egyptian kings to attack us." So they got up and fled in the dusk, and abandoned their tents and their horses and donkeys. They left the camp as it was and ran for their lives. The men who had leprosy reached the edge of the camp, entered one of the tents and ate and drank. Then they took silver, gold and clothes and went off and hid them. They returned and entered another tent and took some things from it and hid them also. Then they said to each other, "What we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news and we're keeping it to ourselves. If we wait until daylight, punishment will overtake us. Let's go at once and report this to the royal palace." So they went and called out to the city gatekeepers and told them, "We went into the Aramean camp and no one was there, not a sound of anyone, only tethered horses and donkeys and the tents left just as they were." The gatekeepers shouted the news and it was reported within the palace.
I will stop and breathe in your presence. Just breathe. Just breathe.
I've never lived through a siege, but it takes very little imagination for us to know that it must be a very frightening experience. The sense of confinement must be very disturbing, the feeling that there's no escape because the enemy surrounds the defended area and flight is impossible. The defending walls must seem very much lower and very much thinner than they appeared to be during less dangerous times. At any point, the enemy could scale or breach those flimsy battlements. The weak were the first to suffer. It was considered an economic necessity of the times to allow the vulnerable in Samaritan society to forfeit their lives in order to sustain the existence of the rest, and so they resorted to infanticide and to cannibalism. The natural affection a mother should have for her own offspring was stifled and suppressed, and even little children were killed, cooked and then eaten, so that they would not only cease to be a burden upon society, but also benefit others by their deaths. In fear, the once warm camaraderie of God's people had given way to a lonely dog-eat-dog fight for survival as the situation became ever more critical. Death, that once remote possibility, now never far from the anxious thoughts of even the most confident fighter in the city. And so, enter our protagonists. Not strong, confident fighters, but weak, crippled lepers, teetering on the very verge of death. 4 starving lepers sitting by the gate now pluck up courage from the extremity of their distress to steal away in the twilight to the heart of the enemy camp. As they come near to the camp, there's a strange silence. No guards, no stir. They creep to the first tent and find it empty, and then another, and another, and another, until at last they realise beyond shadow of doubt that the enemy has gone, leaving all their baggage behind them. So for a while they feast and plunder. Small blame to them. This day is a day of good tidings, they say, or so the King James renders it with its customary understatement. I would imagine that their thoughts would have been far more effusive than that. This day was so much more than just good tidings. It was a day of deliverance from the very jaws of death, a day of unsurpassed relief, joy unbounded, and greatest happiness imaginable. The change of circumstances which they were now experiencing was likely so great that they would scarcely be able to take it in, and so they feast on everything that's before them. Starting with food and drink to fill their bellies, they then notice the wider treasures available to them of silver, gold, clothing and other trinkets, all of which they take for themselves. For these lepers, there is no doubt that this is a salvation encounter. Now, instead of famine, there will be abundance. Instead of darkness, light. Instead of terror, peace. Instead of despair, hope. Though the specifics of their experience are different, in essence it's the same as the salvation encounter that we have through the gospel. Abundant life, light in our darkness, peace in our struggles and hope in Jesus, glad tidings of great joy. It's an encounter that we can live in. The new life that we found in Jesus being a table spread groaning with food in an otherwise starving land. Treasures and joy of a depth unknown to us before. Just as those 4 lepers dove into the abundance they found, so too can we. The Christian life is not one of hardship and misery, but is one to be enjoyed, filled with every good gift from a generous Father God. All we need, past our imaginings, out of the range of our hopes, and exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all we could have ever asked for or thought of. As followers of Jesus, we need sometimes to be reminded to enjoy our life of fellowship with him. But then in the story, conscience awakes within the lepers, and the same thought occurs to each of them. This is not patriotic. This is scarcely human. It's a shame for us to be sitting here gorging ourselves whilst a city is starving within a stone's throw. So they say to one another, what we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news, and we're keeping it to ourselves. How cruel it would have been if they'd simply kept this news to themselves. How many of those still in the city, wrongly under the impression that they were still under siege, living without hope, living in terror, despair and fear, needlessly living half lives of struggle, how many of them would die without ever knowing that freedom and abundance, deliverance, salvation and relief awaited them simply by walking outside the walls of their self-confinement? And so their inner voices stir them to their duty to share the good news message they've discovered. So they go to the city gates and announce their gospel message. This is the heart of today's cross-reference. Andrew had a message of good news and he shared it. The lepers did likewise. And so should we. We have a gospel message that is one of salvation, rooted in our encounter and friendship with the Creator of the universe. When he came to earth, angelic messengers declared glad tidings of great joy for all mankind. For they knew him who had come. And now we are to be the messengers declaring abundant life, light in our darkness, peace in our struggles, and hope in Jesus.
Gotta go, gotta show, I'm not gonna be afraid. Gotta reach, 'cause I know the truth never fades away.
Stepping into new ground, sharing by what I found. Nothing can stop me now. Listen and move your feet, catch rhythm to the beat. Nothing can stop me now. Tell everyone about the one who made me. Tell about the one who chose me. Tell everyone about the one who saved me. Go spread the news wherever. Go spread the news forever.
Wanna share anywhere, at least wanna make a sound. Let 'em know that the one who turns everything tell everyone. Nothing can stop me now. Nothing can stop me now. Nothing can stop me now.